Ladies and gentlemen, Fourth and Trollers, welcome back to Fourth and Troll Fantasy, the most entertaining fantasy football podcast on the planet. I'm Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And we are back post Week 7. A little bit of upsets in Week 7 to talk about here. We got a fun episode for you guys today. It's going to be a good time. Before we jump into all of that, though, Wes, how's it going? I see the flask is still on the whatever you want to call it, bookshelf.
Yeah, this bad boy's going to stay here, I think, for the rest of the season. It'd be so great if we get to a point in the Fourth and Troll career where, we got a separate room in our own homes, and we can there's a nice decor and stuff, and a Teddy the Troll behind us. I want this on my Fourth and Troll
That's going to be
setup.
On the Fourth and Troll set for life.
With a lot of other knickknacks that you can't really see. But hey, I'm good. I did well for Bimageddon. I actually did well. I didn't win a lot. I lost by a single point that came down to Brandon Ayuk in one league. But, I got through a lot of leagues, and I feel proud to know that my team is solid, even without all of these starters. So, it affects the record, but I feel pretty good going forward. I think I'm going to make playoffs in most of my leagues. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm feeling good. Jordan Addison carried me to a little bit of a few victories. Some of them just adding points on, just piling points on at the end there, just for fun. But what a performance! A little bit of a breakout there for the man at a USC. But I'm good. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm feeling good about, I previously had a bit of a rant about, I had a team that was the second most points in the entire league. And I was 1-4 or something like that. I was just kept losing, and I just, whatever it is, I'm proud to say I'm going to 3-4 after this week. I'm making the climb back up. We're working on it, and in a good performance too. Over 150 points in this match, so we're feeling good.
Wow,
the team looks good. The team looks ready. AJ Brown and Keenan Allen and
AJ Brown, man.
Zay Flowers, Deontay Johnson's back on the squad. Tyler Lockett's there. Rashee Rice is there. Well, my entire bench scored 10+ points. The depth is incredible, you guys. We love to see it. And we're back on the rise. Maybe the playoffs are coming up. We're excited for it. And I'm excited to go to Week 8. We made it through. We made it through Bimageddon. We apparently, we'll get to it in the news here. Apparently there are no bye weeks this week. They just decided to throw 6 teams on a bye for Week 7. And they're like, Week 8? No, you're all going to play. Okay.
Wild.
I guess that's the thing. All right, yeah, sure. So, listen, we got a fun episode for you. We're going to recap Week 7, hyped up and let down. Fluke for real. Obviously going to hit you with a little bit of a waiver wire, and then a Thursday night football preview of the Buffalo Bills versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Going to have a fun time. Before we do all that, though, while you're down following us on all our social media, go ahead while you're down there, subscribe, ring the bell. And hit a like and comment. Let us know how you did this week in fantasy football. Let us know if Jordan Addison came in clutch time for you, or if you were sadly a Bijan Robinson owner and Arthur Smith hated you. Apparently, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, and we empathize. We are with you, Bijan Robinson owners. Before we do all that, though, let us jump into the news because we got some things to go over before we get to a Week 7 recap. So, Wes, take it away with the need to know. What are we looking at?
Well, just as you mentioned earlier that we have no bye weeks this week, and we're going to jump back into that in Week 9. So let's enjoy every one of our starters that is healthy for this week before everything changes. And while they're still on the same teams because trade deadline is approaching. Okay, So we got to start out a little bit of some bummer news. We found out last night after the Monday Night Football matchup, Chris Olave was arrested for reckless driving, and he was driving 35 miles per hour over the speed limit. Reportedly, he was cooperative. He did not resist the arrest, but we will have to wait and see if the Saints organization and or the NFL, NFLPA decide to take any action. Additionally, Chiefs wide receiver Justin Ross was also arrested yesterday for criminal damages of more than $25,000 and is facing felony charges. We will also have to wait and see if any action is taken there. So, bit of a rough start to the news, but let's get into some more need-to-know information here. Deebo Samuel did not play last night. That may have had a role in why the 49ers lost, but he has a hairline fractured in his shoulder. He was not only ruled out last night, but he will also miss next week's game as well. And then, of course, after that, we'll need to see what their timeline is for Deebo Samuel. Christian McCaffrey did play last night. He played very well, lived up to his CMC standards. He apparently has a slight tear in his oblique, but he said he hadn't felt any pain since the Wednesday before Monday Night Football. So it appears as if, for now, that injury is not going to affect him in the long run, not to be much of a concern. So the Rams officially placed Kyren Williams on injured reserve. We didn't get a chance to mention that before Sunday, because that was our Thursday or Friday episode when we talked about that. Earliest he can come back is week 12. We're going to talk about the Rams backfield in a moment as well. And actually at the end of this, I'll just jump to that right now. Here's what Sean McVay said about the backfield against the Steelers. He said that he's going to try to get Myles Gaskin a little bit more involved. He'd like to see a little bit more of Zach Evans, but what he did say is that this is pretty much what it's going to look like while Kyren Evans is out. And we will talk about Darrell Henderson shortly. Speaking of running backs that were not on the field, Arthur Smith said that Bijan Robinson just wasn't feeling all that great. And apparently that's why he didn't play much on Sunday. And you remember how I said I lost by a point in one league? I had Bijan in that league. That would have been very nice to know that he would have been ruled out or something, but he only went in for a little bit. That's all the information we have. So hopefully he's going to be fine, but a bit of a disappointment. Anyway, Jimmy Garoppolo was expected to play this week against the Lions, but Josh McDaniels right now says that they don't have much clarity right now. It may be Brian Hoyer. It may be Aiden O'Connell. Again, they'll try to make a decision if Garoppolo isn't ready. Kevin Stefanski was apparently holding Deshaun Watson out for the rest of that game against the Colts for his best interest, and they do still plan to start him next week. As we mentioned, the trade deadline is approaching. Raiders did want to make it very clear that they have no intention of trading Devontae Adams, even though he likes to go to the Twitter or the X and have his complaints, but they are not going to get rid of him, or at least intend not to. Jerome Ford, back to that Browns-Colts game, he left with an ankle injury, and he is expected to miss 1 to 2 weeks with this injury. Of course, Kareem Hunt will likely be the lead back there in the meantime. DK Metcalf was a very short notice game time decision, was ruled out with his hip injury before that game. Pete Carroll said they're going to try to assess his status a little bit better in 2 days. On Wednesday, we'll get a bit of an update on what DK Metcalf's injury looks like. And of course, we'll share that in our Friday episode, what the latest information is. And last piece of news, we found out yesterday that Dawson Knox is going to have a surgery on his wrist. He's going to be out indefinitely. We don't know if that's for a couple of weeks, most of the season. We'll find out from Sean McDermott, who says he doesn't know the timetable right now, but we do know that the first-round rookie Dalton Kincaid, who stepped in quite nicely for Dawson Knox, will be the tight end one as long as he is out. That's it for the news. Now, let's go over Week 7, the By-Mageddon aftermath. Let's talk about what we learned here from Week 7, baby.
Yeah, By-Mageddon, and we seem to have more people in the hyped up segment than we did in Week 6.
Yeah.
We got a lot of really, really exciting performances on Sunday, starting off with the duo in Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. 41.86 fantasy points for Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce with 35.9. Obviously, Mother T Swift was in the presence, so obviously they had to show up there for him. Hey, or let's talk about Lamar Jackson here. My goodness. This is the idea of what I thought this Todd Monken offense would be up against this Detroit Lions defense who looked like a shell of themselves on Sunday. The entire Detroit Lions team. Someone bent down and bit their kneecaps off. I don't know what was going on there, but they looked nothing like themselves. But Lamar Jackson, 39.8 fantasy points, unbelievable. 21 for 27, 257 yards, 3 touchdowns. Had a rushing touchdown as well. Dude popped off. Another guy that we're used to seeing pop off last year, he had his games. D'Onta Foreman. Exciting stuff for D'Onta Foreman. 33 fantasy points this week. No Justin Fields. We weren't sure what last week was going to look like without Justin Fields when he got hurt. Well, D'Onta Foreman seems to be that dude. 16 carries for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also had a receiving touchdown. Tyler Bijan. Okay. All right. So I guess start running backs for the Bears, whatever Justin Fields is out. We'll see what happens there. Gardner Minshew. Oh, man. The Colts are definitely a little disappointed that they don't have their franchise quarterback, Anthony Richardson, right now. But, man, he had them in that game all the way till the end. And had there not been some potentially questionable calls in that game, the Colts might have won. 305 passing yards on 15 completions for Gardner Minshew, 2 touchdowns, had a rushing touchdown as well, 2 rushing touchdowns. I don't even know what dude scored so many points for that team. It felt single-handed. It felt like he was the one guy doing everything, but he kept them in that game against a strong Cleveland Browns defense, and they had their way. Jordan Addison, talked about him a little bit already, had his breakout game. 31.4 fantasy points, 7 catches for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. And my goodness, that second touchdown was unbelievable. He went, hey, you know what? I messed up a contested catch to start out the game, and this guy got an interception off of it. Not this time. No. That's my ball. I'm going to take that. And ripped the interception out of the defender's hands and just takes it at the end of the half. All the way for a touchdown, 60 yards. Unbelievable.
I used to daydream of making plays like that when I was in middle school.
Dude, I know, right?
Fantasize about being that physical.
I'm just gonna strip it and I'm just gonna take it and go. It's just gonna be it's gonna be awesome. And
I slapped my face like Home Alone and stared at the screen. It was like, oh my gosh, this is it. He's alive. No JJ, and when JJ's back.
Yeah, still Jordan Addison is up there. I don't remember exactly what my preseason prediction was for Jordan Addison. I believe it was 1,000 yards, and I don't remember how many touchdowns, but he's at 6 touchdowns right now. I think you said
5. I think you said 5.
Well,
so
he hit
off
6.
one.
So there we go. We'll see where we go from here. Obviously, no Jefferson, a little different, but still, Jordan Addison is popping off, having a fun time in the league, and then AJ Brown is just a different human being than anyone else in this league, it feels like right now. He is unbelievable. 10 catches for 137 yards and a touchdown, 29.7 fantasy points, 15 targets. Gosh. This guy is just unreal. Unbelievable. And I'm so happy I have him on so many of my fantasy teams. He is such a freaking good player and great for fantasy football as well. Those people had us hyped up. Who had us let down? Hey, some big names here. I'm let down, Maybe you had some of these guys and you came into the week and were like, yeah, I'm ready. Here we go. Big game.
Oh, yeah.
Gonna get some big performances. Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Chargers. Oh, gonna be a shootout between Herbert and Mahomes. Here we go, baby. 12.9 fantasy points for Justin Herbert. That's fun. Cool. Good times there. Keenan Allen, 9.5 fantasy points. Hey, that's a fun time there. Cool. Fun times. Hey, Austin Eckler, 5.6 fantasy points. All right. Chargers offense. Figure it out. All right. That's what we need to do. Figure it out. Because what's going on here? This is not what we were signed up for as fantasy managers. Obviously, down game for Keenan Allen, down game for Justin Herbert. Austin Eckler, it's a little bit maybe something we need to keep an eye on because obviously his week 1 was fantastic, but 2 games back now from the injury, and he has not looked like his usual self, and he looked to be a little bit bothered by that ankle in that game. So interesting stuff to see. We'll have to talk about it a little bit more. Cooper Kupp, 6.9 fantasy points, just 2 catches for 29 yards. He caught a 2-point conversion, so he gets the 2 points there. Definitely a letdown for fantasy lineups. I had Puka in my lineup. My opponent had Cooper Kupp in their lineup, and man, that was just a awkward. Nervous wreck every single offensive snap. I was just all right, let's see where this one goes. We'll have to see. And it just kept going
like
to Puka.
Bumping into your ex with your new girlfrend.
Right.
It's
It's
like, sorry.
It's just
she's way hotter.
Yeah, okay. Anyway. Cooper Kupp disappointing. Jared Goff also disappointing. Talked about it. The Lions looked terrible. Don't know what happened there for that Lions offense, but offense, defense, the whole thing. They just looked out of sync. I don't know what happened. They had a down game. They've looked really good all year. So maybe they should be able to bounce back on Monday night at home against the Raiders. So not too worried, but just a bit of a letdown. Tua Tagovailoa and Raheem Mostert, both bit of a letdown on Sunday Night Football against the Eagles. 12.34 fantasy points for Tua. 216 yards and a touchdown. Throws a pick. There'll be better days ahead. I mean, it feels like there may be just a little bit of a roller coaster ride with Tua. I think when the offense is running well and doing its thing, obviously he's going to have his big games, but I don't want to get into it too much. But we'll just there was some questionable officiating on that Sunday Night Football game to talk about. Go ahead and tune into Monday's Pat McAfee show if you haven't seen that yet. So. There you go. We'll just leave it there. Raheem Mostert, 6.1 fantasy points, 9 carries for 45 yards. He's still going for 5 yards a carry. Had 3 targets. The running game just didn't really get going here. The Miami Dolphins offensive line was missing 3 starters, and the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line is one of the best in the league. So the combination there just did not go well for the Dolphins running game. I couldn't believe the stat line for Raheem Mostert when I saw it at the end of the game, because at one point he had like 3 rushes for like negative 10 yards, and I was like, well, this is not a good game. And the fact that he got back to 9 for 45 just shows that they've got something going on there in Miami. They just got to, get a penalty called in their way at some point, maybe
and get healthy.
Once. Yeah, and get healthy. We'll see what happens there whenever. We have Xavier Howard on that defense. Jalen Ramsey's back. We'll see what happens when that O-line gets fixed up. Devon Adrian comes back. Oh, well, who knows? Hey, on the other side of the ball, though, DeAndre Swift let down as well by him. Just 10.8 fantasy points, 15 carries for 62 yards, 3 catches for 13 yards. Just a disappointment for DeAndre Swift. The early season success he was having that we saw from week 2 to like week 4, week 5 was some exciting stuff. It slowed down a little bit over the last couple of weeks, so we'll have to see what happens here. That is hyped up and let down, though. And now we're going to jump into Fluke or For Real. There's some things to talk about, some things to break down. Then we're going to do some rapid fire for you. First one here is Jahmyr Gibbs. 27.6 fantasy points. Hey, we got the day we knew could happen.
Oh, man.
It was in the absence of David Montgomery, and a handful of it maybe came in garbage time. But hey, that doesn't matter for fantasy football. That happens when you're a good, talented player. That's what can happen when you get the opportunities there. He had 21 opportunities in that game. Don't even really need that. Don't need that every week. Just give him like 12 to 15. Just give him some chances here. Jahmyr Gibbs with 27.6 fantasy points. My guess on David Montgomery's timeline for his return from his injury is that they have next week against the Raiders on Monday night, and then they have their bye week. And then I believe he will come back after the bye week. So I think we're going to get at least one more week of Jahmyr Gibbs being the top guy. That being said, Wes, we're going Fluke or For Real on 27.6 for Jahmyr Gibbs.
This stat line is exactly the stat line I expected out of Jahmyr Gibbs going into the NFL.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of rushing yards, happens to punch one in on the ground, but it's the 9 catches for 10 targets, 58 receiving yards. That is what he did at Alabama, and that is why you and I had him in our top 10, and I think I am praying that this is irrefutable for Dan Campbell. I'm praying that he cannot ignore what Jahmyr Gibbs did when he had this many touches. So I'm going to say for real.
Yeah, I think this is for real, at least for next week. Now, when they come back after the bye week and David Montgomery is back and healthy, I do not think this performance is going to completely shift the offensive game plan for the Detroit Lions. I still think David Montgomery is going to be the top running back. Do I think that's wise? I don't know. But they're winning football games with him, so that who are we? Who are we to say not to do that? What I will say is that I'm with you, that this is something that Dan Campbell looks at and goes, yeah, we're better when he is involved. We're better when he's involved in this game. Maybe not after such a terrible loss, but but I think this will be a sign of good things to come. And I don't blame you if you're like, well, he had a good game, I'm selling him. Like, if you want to try and get your value for him there, if you're not completely sold, I get that. I think this is for real as far as like usage goes. This might be Jahmyr Gibbs' best game of the season, but I think there will still be more usage that we like to see, and a lot more of the targets that we like to see. So this is exciting stuff for Jahmyr Gibbs owners. Good stuff to see him having a breakout game. Another running back here we're going to talk about, Darrell Henderson, 13.8 fantasy points. We talked about it on the news. He is going to be what it seems to be the guy for the Rams while Kyren Williams is gone. How he went from like sitting at home to then coming onto a team and being the guy in the span of like a week, I don't understand. But he has the rapport with Sean McVay. He has the trust with Sean McVay. He just seems like he's going to be the guy. 13.8. Feels like it's for real until Kyren Williams comes back. And then, if I'm being honest, I think I would be surprised if he gets cut or waived from the team once Kyren Williams is back. What are your thoughts?
I think he is probably earning a spot as the backup to Kyren Williams. We'll need to see what Ronnie Rivers is like and how he's involved when he's also back. But we're going to talk about the running back that he replaced last year in a moment. Cam Akers did not perform well with the Rams last year, and Darrell Henderson stepped in. 18 carries is the reason I want to call this for real. But I'll be honest, I think this is, he'll be the Michael Thomas of running backs. Like, he'll get you a quick 10 points.
Sit around here, sure.
You are not playing him to win. You're probably going to use him as a floor option. We've got more bye weeks coming up, not this week, but the week after. So he's a decent choice, especially while Kyren and Ronnie are both out. But I'm not expecting him to get close to 20 points at all this season. But as far as getting double digits, that's for real.
Yeah, I agree. I think next week is going to be tough. The Rams have a Dallas next week. I don't necessarily love rolling out Darrell Henderson against Dallas if I don't have to. So not thrilled about that, but week after, we'll see what happens here. Darrell Henderson should be relevant while Kyren Williams is gone. So we'll see what happens there. And then you just mentioned him, Cam Akers, 8.2 fantasy points. Now, we might be saying, why are you talking about him? He scored 8.2 fantasy points. Well, because we saw a lot more of him on Monday Night Football for the Minnesota Vikings than we have in these previous games since he was traded. Alexander Mattison had a 55% snap share and 8 carries. And Cam Akers had his highest snap share of his tenure with the Vikings so far at 38%, but he out-carried Alexander Mattison. He had 10 carries, only 31 yards, but 2 catches for 30 yards on 3 targets there. It seemed like his carries were coming in situations where it was pretty clear that a run was going to be happening, that it was a running down. And so maybe that could lead to like the lack of efficiency there. But 8.2 for Cam Akers. Is this a sign of things to come, Wes?
It's quite peculiar, to say the least, especially because they both had the same amount of targets. Both Akers and Madison each had 3 targets. If one was more the PPR back, it would be easier to interpret what next week may look like, where it's okay, well, Madison is more of the PPR back, and he's seen enough targets from Kirk Cousins to have some decent value in that regard. But it's like an identical statistic, just Cam Akers had a couple more carries. And so, yeah, I think this is a sign of things to come, especially when you need to try to establish more of a ground game without Justin Jefferson. Now, that also may have changed with how Jordan Addison just dominated, and TJ Hawkinson was really good too. But I think this is probably a sign of things to come. And I think this is for real for both Akers and Madison.
I agree. Yeah, I do. I think this is definitely a sign of things to come. I'm just going to say real quick, on a whim, pretty much for no reason whatsoever, I was just like, I picked up Michael Mayer. He isn't exciting. He didn't have a good week again. I'm short on running backs here in the Trollers League. I can just grab Cam Akers. Let me just see what happens here. So just chucked in the ad there before the game started. And then I was watching the game and I was like, wow, that was a really timely ad. I'm like, I'm very, Cam Akers might have been like the waiver wire option for me to prioritize. And now I don't think I don't have to. This is exciting. So
pretty good.
There you go. Might have gotten some running back up there. We'll see.
Nostradamus, more like Noah Stradamus. Anyway, Fluker for real.
Just gritty the entire time. All right. That's a little bit of a Fluker for real breakdown. Now we're just going to rapid fire some here for you guys. We're going to have a little bit of fun just shooting off here. Starting out with Deontay Foreman, 33 fantasy points. Wes, what do we think?
As long as Justin Fields not under center, that's for real.
I agree. As soon as Fields is back or Khalil Herbert's back, we'll have to see with Roshan Johnson next week, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. Deontay Foreman seems like he will be the guy. Gardner Minshew, 31.1 fantasy points against a strong Cleveland defense.
Yeah, might as well, man, for real.
We'll see what happens. His wide receiver, 2, Josh Downs, your boy, 23.5 fantasy points, has a long touchdown on Sunday. Fluker for real?
Do I even need to say it? For real?
Dude, as soon as I saw the play happen, it was like the free play on the flag, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, and it hit it, and I was like, oh yeah, baby, there we go. It was a great time there.
So much more sustainable success for him. This is so for real.
Yeah, with Gardner Minshew, Josh Downs is for real. It's just exciting stuff for the rest of the year for him. Darren Waller, 22.8 fantasy points. Fluker for real, Wes.
Oh, I'm worried when Daniel Jones is back.
Me too.
That's all I'll say.
Me too.
Please, Danny Dimes, just let Tyrod Taylor be your coach. But you got to say for real, because no one else in the Giants is doing this.
Right. Here's what I will say. The reports were this week that Brian Dable took over the offensive coordinating position, was calling plays on Sunday for the offense. Oh. That is the word that the reports out of the Giants camp. 8 targets. It's exciting stuff for Darren Waller. We'll have to wait and see what happens next week. Gus Edwards, my dud for week 7, 21.4 fantasy points. Again, the Lions look like a shell of themselves, so I don't know what just happened there, but what do we think? Fluker for real?
I think this is a fluke. I think this was just an incredible game. I think this really was just the Ravens had a master plan against the Lions, and this was just a good game. I say a fluke.
Yeah. Gus Edwards had a massive catch and run. 1 target on the game, but he caught the pass like 3 yards past the line of scrimmage and then ran for like another 77 yards. So he had an 80-yard catch. That's 9 points of this 21.4. A 12.4 point game for Gus Edwards, I'd be like, yeah, that's pretty much in his wheelhouse. Like, yeah, he had like 60 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Sure. That sounds good. So we'll see what happens here. This feels fluky because of the big play, but also I listen, it happened. So there you go. But Gus Edwards, Flex territory, maybe. We'll see what happens there. Jonathan Taylor, 21 fantasy points. Fluker for real, Wes?
He's back, baby. JT's in the house. Looking good for real.
It is his job there. It seems like, even though Zach Moss is involved, they actually have the same amount of carries in this game. But I can't see this team having 36 running back carries a game. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens here. I'm going to say for real on Jonathan Taylor being back. Cortland Sutton, 19.6 fantasy points. Dude, we were just a year early, it feels like, because this feels for real, right?
This is for real, and especially as we keep an eye on the Broncos with trade allegations. But Sutton is clearly the only person Russell Wilson trusts in that offense.
Yeah, definitely. Let's stay in the AFC West here. Joshua Palmer, 18.3 fantasy points, 5 catches for 133 yards, 7 targets. What do you think, Wes? I'm
going to call fluke. That seems... that just seems like so much it's because Keenan Allen won't do that bad again. Austin Eckler won't do that bad again. But I will at least give the credit to Josh Palmer as the wide receiver too, and that Quentin Johnson is not involved. And Gerald Everett, I think, had a touchdown as well. So I think it was. I'm pushing back on this, but I do see what has happened from this game against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think Joshua Palmer is worthy to be rostered, even considered for flex territory for your team. I think it's just become clear that he is filling the Mike Williams role, like you said, not Quentin Johnson. So we'll see what continues here. But 18.3, I know a lot of people rolled him out this week in Bimageddon, so they're feeling pretty excited about that. Marquez Valdez-Scantling on the other side of the ball there. 17.4 fantasy points. Wes, Fluker for real?
I'm going to still call fluke on this, man.
Yeah.
Nothing said this was anything to expect from him.
Yeah. Fluke for sure. His wide receiver mate, Rashee Rice, your stud of the week, Wes. 17 fantasy points, 5 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. A little bit of a semi-breakout here for Rashee Rice. What do we think, Fluke for real?
I mean, I called him my stud for the week, so I'd have to follow that up with saying this is for real.
It is. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 16.3 fantasy points, 4 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, he benefited from DK Metcalf being out. But after a week 6 where he did play 73% of snaps, what do we think here with JSN?
I think it's starting to evolve where he is going to be part of this offense more and more. And that was something that you mentioned at the start of this season, that they don't run wide receiver 3 sets that often. I think they're going to have to start doing that because there's a reason they took him in the first round. So I'm going to say for real, I don't necessarily want him too often my flex at the moment, but I definitely want him rostered. So this is for real.
Yeah, definitely. Jake Bobo, undrafted wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks. He's a rookie. 16.1 fantasy points, 4 catches for 61 yards, and one of the most skillful touchdowns I have seen this season. My goodness. Jake Bobo, Fluke for real?
Pretty cool, man. Fluke.
Yeah, it's a fluke. Once DK comes back, he's going to be out. But I do love saying your name, so I hope you appear more on this podcast. Dalton Kincaid, 15.5 fantasy points, 8 catches for 8 targets, 75 yards. This is a guy you really liked in the preseason. Wes, what do we think? Fluke for real?
I'm leaning all in on Dalton Kincaid. You're going to hear me say his name a couple times in this episode. I love this guy. That's for real.
Yeah, I think it is for real as well. It's an exciting time for the Buffalo Bills fans to see your your first round draft pick come out and play like that. 8 catches on 8 targets is exciting stuff. Najee Harris, 15.8 fantasy points, finds the end zone for the first time this season. Fluker for real.
Do it again, man. You got like a 53, 56% snap count. Jaylen Warren did the same thing. I can't just throw you in the lineup now, man. No, I gotta say fluke because I need to see it 3 times.
Yeah, it's a fluke.
Sheesh.
Kareem Hunt, 15.1 fantasy points, 10 carries for 31 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fluker for real. With Jerome Ford potentially missing a little bit of time.
With Jerome Ford out, yeah, you can definitely line him up. But, I mean, that is such a fluky stat line, man.
Yeah, the 2
touchdowns
really
off of 31 rushing yards. I mean, you take away 12 points. We're looking at a 3-point game. So actually, that's a fluke. This is a fluke.
Yeah, I'm gonna be interested to see how the next couple weeks pan out without Jerome Ford. I wonder if he's going to play well enough in the next 2 weeks for him to move up on the depth chart or at least earn a 50-50 split. We'll see what happens. Keep an eye on Kareem Hunt over the next couple weeks. We'll have to see. Tyler Algier, 14.2 fantasy points, 21 carries for 59 yards, 3 catches for 53 yards, 14.2 fantasy points. Fluker for real.
For real, drop Bijan Robinson and just move on with your life because Arthur Smith is against you. Look me in the eyes. He's against you.
I hope our league mates are listening.
So dumb. It's obviously a fluke, but it's just so, gosh.
Yeah, it's super frustrating. And I listen, here's the thing. I'm going to say something on this real quick. Everybody who is like, there were comments on like posts about Bijan Robinson and like his like post game, like locker room press, whatever, where people were commenting, they were like, "Oh, you lost me my fantasy week. Oh, you lost me money this week. Oh, Vegas is behind this. Oh, blah, blah, all this stuff." Grow up, okay? If dude wasn't feeling his hottest and he didn't want to play, here's my thought. I don't know much about neurology, but if you have a headache like that and like you have to go play and get hit a lot, is there risk of like further injury? There might be. I don't know. The Falcons won the game. Arthur Smith was like, "Yeah, no, we'll be fine without you. Like, get yourself good and we'll be fine. We'll be good to go." That was what I was thrilled to hear. I was thrilled to hear that it was that and not like Bijan Robinson pissed off Arthur Smith and now he's not going to play. Yada, yada, whatever. Yeah. I still don't love how much they use Tyler Algier even when Bijan Robinson is in the game, but what are you going to do? If you're not sure how you're going to use Bijan Robinson in the game, you're going to come out and you're going to tell your opponent, "Hey, our best player on our offense isn't going to play, so prepare yourselves." No. They did their thing. Yeah. If you lost your fantasy week, if you lost money, I'm sorry. Don't come at the dude personally for it. All right? Get over it. Bing, bang, boom. Done. On your head. Joshua Kelly, 13.5 fantasy points, 7 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. Why does Joshua Kelly hate us, dude?
It's like, get out of it.
We're ready for the breakout. Josh Kelly. He has so much value this year. He's the sleeper of the year. And then he gets the job to himself and he sucks. And then as soon as Austin Eckler's back, he's like, "Okay, yeah, I'm good again."
No, it was one rush. It was like a 40-something yard carry to the house. Get out of here. Do not pick him up.
Don't do it. Kendrick Bourne, 16.3 fantasy points, 6 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. This is 2 weeks in a row now, and he had a big week 1. Is he maybe emerging as the top pass catcher for the Patriots?
He's definitely worth considering rostering. I want to throw out one player that has been an impressive wideout for the Patriots camp, which is Demario Douglas. Demario. But he was the star and the only bright spot for the Patriots training camp this whole season. He had a solid game as well, and he was hurt for a little bit. So I want to throw his name out there too. But Kendrick Bourne, if you're going to roster a Patriots player that's not named Ramondre Stevenson, he's the one right now, it feels like. I'll say for real.
It definitely does. Yeah, I think this could be the beginnings of for real. That is going to do it for the good side of Fluker for real. On to the bad side. And this is 2 weeks in a row now from San Francisco 49ers star quarterback Brock Purdy, where he has just not done what he's really shown us he can do over the previous games in his career. He hadn't lost a regular season football game until week 6, and now he's lost 2 in a row. 14.78 fantasy points. I don't know if I jinxed him because I don't know if you remember, Wes. We were talking about Mahomes and Purdy, and it was like, yeah, I would trade Mahomes and just roll with Purdy because like what they're doing for fantasy is comparable, and Brock Purdy's holding his own. And now it's like, oh, you had 2 opportunities to win this football game for your team, and you choked twice. That's just the fact of it, is that like Brock Purdy had chances to win this football game. He had the weapons around him. I understand he didn't have Deebo Samuel. I know. I have acid reflux from this performance too.
Yeah.
He didn't have Deebo Samuel, but it's like you still have Christian McCaffrey, you have George Kittle, you have Brandon Ayuk. like you've got a great defense that you're playing with. You've got one of the brightest minded head coaches in the league. He had everything to equip him to win this game, and he threw 2 interceptions in clutch time. Like it. I don't think it's a sign of things to come, but I don't know if he's like just now rattled and he's just maybe lost a step. I don't know. I don't think I've been seeing the super impressive like passes that I had been seeing for the first 5 weeks for Brock Purdy over the last 2 weeks. I understand that week 6 was a bit of like a monsoon, a lot of weather, stuff like this. This was an indoor game in primetime under the lights, and I can't say I was super impressed with Brock Purdy. I don't know. What do you think, Wes?
I know now how important Trent Williams is to this team.
Sure.
That is, I think, why we are not seeing a Brock Purdy that we have expected. Because when you have a first ballot Hall of Famer helping you keep that pocket clean, that's going to make such a difference. But I will say, regardless, because you know who does not have a good offensive line? Tua. And Tyreek Hill still balled out. And Jalen Waddle, we're going to talk about him in a second too. But the Dolphins do not have an amazing offensive line. And people want to say oh, well, he's a product of the system. Look at the players around him. Of course he's going to be great. Well, I want the quarterback that has Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert. And when Devon Achane is back on my team, I want that guy for fantasy.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the Niners. I want the quarterback that has Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey on that offense because I'm guaranteed points. And yet we were not guaranteed points from this game from a team that, I'll say it, I thought the Vikings defense was pretty bad going into this game. And Brian Flores seemed to have, he drew up the perfect plan.
Yeah,
so
he had his number.
Don't drop Brock Purdy, but it's definitely a cause for concern. I'm not going to say this is for real, but I do not feel that I need to. I'm not in a quarterback controversy on my team if I have Brock Purdy anymore. I'll just continue to start the guy that I drafted before him for now.
I agree. Yeah. Sorry. I know people lost their week because of Purdy. The matchup was fantastic. And it's disappointing to see. But Trent Williams, get the best tackle in the league back, and hopefully you'll be able to have some more success with that offense. Austin Eckler, 5.6 fantasy points, 14 carries for 45 yards, 1 catch. And here's the big one for me. 2 targets.
Yeah.
2 targets. That's it. In a game where they were tied at halftime and then trailing and needed to come back, 2 targets. Now, the Chiefs' defense is no joke. Chiefs' defense is good. We can all agree upon that. But this is not week 1 Austin Eckler, and this is not first-round Austin Eckler that we drafted. And I'm becoming a little bit worried that this ankle injury is lingering a little bit. And I'm not sure what to make of it. I will acknowledge that his two games back since injury have been against very good defenses. Have been against the Cowboys, have been against the Chiefs. It hasn't been the easiest welcome back after your injury. So I'm not necessarily panicking. I still think this is probably fluky. I think Austin Eckler still has it in him to come out and be an RB1 for fantasy. But this is disappointing, to say the least.
If I learned anything from TikTok and what I said about Jamar Chase, I feel like I need to just kind of hold out and be like, yeah, Eckler will turn it around, but they don't have a bye week anymore. This is it. This is the rest of his season. And his bread and butter in fantasy has absolutely been PPR. Again, he has never rushed for 1,000 yards, same as Alvin Kamara, which is why it was so strange to see Kamara get 19 carries, but the targets were still there, and his PPR work was why he had like a 19-point game in his first game back. I'm talking about Kamara still, and it was all PPR. This is what Eckler does. He gets receptions And it's just weird to see Josh Palmer and Gerald Everett more fantasy relevant for 2 weeks than Austin Eckler. I'm not going to say this is for real. I'm going to call this a fluke, but I would. It's just a fluke. It's a fluke.
Are you trying to sell if you have them based off name value?
I was thinking about that for a moment, but I can't sell Austin Eckler because
I think it's a fluke. I think it will.
How do you get rid of a running back at this time?
Right. Exactly. A running back who has already had his bye week. A running back you can play every single week until the fantasy championship. Like I just don't think you can get rid of him. Better days to come for sure. That's definitely what we're looking forward to here. A little bit of rapid fire with these other guys here. Brandon Ayuk, 10.7 fantasy points. Wes, our boy, did not have the greatest game, but what do we think?
I still say this is a fluke. I actually think that I learned more that Deebo Samuel contributes to this offense in ways that'll help Ayuk. But he made big time catches. He just did not get the fantasy settling he wanted, but he was a huge part of why the 49ers were trying to rally back in that game. That's a fluke.
100%. Yeah. Devontae Smith, 8.9 fantasy points, 4 catches, 5 targets for 49 yards. Wes, what do we think?
I would trade him for a kicker. I trade him for a defense. I trade him for a defense on a bye week right now, man. Forget it. This is for real. This is it. We're not going to bring him up again until he has a 25-point game. Because when you're playing the Dolphins and you still target A.J. Brown 15 times, forget it. I was wrong. Devonta Smith is not a top 10 wide receiver. He's not going to be top 15. I was wrong. He's not going to. You don't need to start him anymore. I'll say it.
Are you willing to, if you don't have him on a team, are you willing to sell like I'm trying to think, are you would you be willing to give up like Cortland Sutton for Devonta Smith right now? Like
Cortland Sutton
to acquire
has been
Devonta
so
Smith?
reliable. Like I have so much more trust in Sutton and I know Devonta Smith's ceiling is so high,
right?
But Devonta Smith had more targets at the end of the year than AJ Brown. That was an important reason why I liked him going into this season and why I thought it was going to carry over. And the way that people were talking about him, it felt like this was going to be a serious thing. And I don't know, man. I offered Aaron Jones to get Devonta Smith. And the counter offer was no, give me DeAndre Swift. And I was like, I can't believe I'd rather have DeAndre Swift than Devonta Smith.
Yeah.
I don't know who I would let go to get Devonta Smith. But I'll tell you, I will want anybody to get rid of Devonta Smith. Yeah.
No, that's fair. I get that. Definitely disappointing for someone we had really high hopes for coming into the year. Jaleel McLaughlin, 5.6 fantasy points, 5 carries for 45 yards. Only 2 targets, though. 1 catch for a yard. 5.6, fluke for real, Wes.
I kind of say this is a fluke. I still believe in Jaleel McLaughlin.
I think so, too. I think so, too.
It's a weird game,
I don't think that I don't think the Broncos are going to be in any win opportunities very much in games for the rest of the year. I think that because they were there, they were like, okay, we need to ground and pound. And I think you're going to use Javonte Williams to do that more than you're going to use a 5'7", 185-pound dude. So
big.
He's as tall as he's literally as big as you are on your flask.
This is Jaleel McLaughlin. There he is.
Yeah. Russell Wilson just looks at that guy and targets him 8 times a game. Listen, it's a fluke. I think there are better days to come for Jaleel McLaughlin. Josh Jacobs, 5.1 fantasy points. Fluker for real, Wes.
For real. I mean, you lock him in your lineup, but it's the same thing we said about Devontae Adams. This is it.
Yeah, I think better days are to come when there's not Brian Hoyer as the quarterback running the offense.
Sure.
And we've seen that with Jimmy Garoppolo. Josh Jacobs had some down weeks, had a couple really good weeks. I like Josh Jacobs with Garoppolo. So enough to call this a fluke because of the situation. So I think that's where I'm at with Josh Jacobs. Anyways, Jalen Waddle, last guy here, 12.3 fantasy points, 6 catches on 6 targets for 63 yards. Fluke for real, Wes.
Well, I'll say for real. I think it's time we say for real on this. And it's just because we have expected Jalen Waddle to be giving us wide receiver 1 type of numbers. A lot of people actually strategized their drafts and felt fine taking Jalen Waddle as their wide receiver 1. And that's just not the case. He's the clear wide receiver 2 behind Tyreek Hill, who is clearly on pace for 2,000 yards. So this is it. We're going to get in this double-digit 15-point range, and you just got to hope that maybe one day he has a boom game, and that's it.
Yeah. The hope is that you hit on your wide receiver 2, who is acting like a wide receiver 1, and you don't have to rely on Jalen Waddle to be your wide receiver 1. Maybe you got Puka. If you have Puka, roll out Jalen Waddle, you're happy. There you go.
Fine.
That's it for Fluke for real for week 7. On to week 8 madness right now. Real quick, we're going to do waiver wire and then a Thursday Night Football preview. Wes, who is your top waiver ad for week 8? Yeah. I had to think if
8.
I needed to say 8 or 7.
8.
Week 8. Who's the week 8 top waiver ad?
Right, and we don't know. We haven't shared with each other. This is going to be a fresh reaction, so we could possibly say the same name. Well, I kind of teased it earlier in this episode. My waiver wire is going to be Dalton Kincaid. We are going to be moving into bye weeks in the future. We're going to be hitting some injuries that we don't know about yet, and there's a reason they got this guy in the first round. And obviously, it feels important to try to look at the next in line, next man up, the backup to Dawson Knox, and that's Dalton Kincaid. But 8 targets, 8 catches, 15.5 points. That is a guy that I'm very interested in. Now, going into the season, personally, I compare Dalton Kincaid's body movement and route running ability to that of Cooper Kupp. I know what that means. That is a big deal. But that is what I saw in my eye test in watching Dalton Kincaid out of college. He is the real deal. And that is extremely important as to why the Bills drafted him this way. Now, Dawson Knox is going to miss some time. We don't know how long just yet, but we do know that this season, slowly, Dalton Kincaid has been seeing a little bit more of the snap count each game. And I think it was last week and maybe the week before, they were having equal fantasy points. So it's not like, next man up, Jerome Ford fills in for Nick Chubb. No, Kincaid was getting involved in the offense. Josh Allen himself in the preseason said that Kincaid's the real deal. I know Stefon Diggs is there, but I honestly think Dalton Kincaid will be the second highest targeted player on this team for the next several weeks. And the tight end position is still really rough. And if you can get an advantage in that, that can be huge for you. So Dalton Kincaid is my waiver wire ad for week 8.
And it's a 4th and troll double down. Because my waiver ad for week 8. When you teased it earlier, I was like, oh man, here we go. I love it. Yeah, Dalton Kincaid is my top waiver ad for week 8 as well. You said everything. 8 for 8, 75 yards, no Dawson Knox. Gabe Davis sucks. Dawson Knox is gone for the indefinite amount of time. Dalton Kincaid will step in. Obviously, he was taken early. You just said everything that we need to know. This is just to instill confidence. Dalton Kincaid doubled down for 4th and troll that he is the top waiver ad of the week. I'm in love. I'm excited about Dalton Kincaid. I have a couple leagues where my tight end position is very uncertain. He is my top waiver ad for those leagues especially. And then I'm getting him as a depth piece for other leagues as well, just in case. Like just in that instance. So it's exciting stuff for Dalton Kincaid to come. 4th and troll guarantees it. There you go. Never been wrong.
Never been
We're going to jump into a Thursday Night Football preview. Going to give you some must starts, some risky starts, and some don't starts. And I'm going to start out here with my must start. And I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. Because Dalton Kincaid is my must start for Thursday Night Football. He is going to be out there, ready to go, coming back off of his injury, 8 targets for 75 yards. I don't know what more to say. We just encapsulated all of it in what just happened. But the one thing I'll add is that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just gave up semi-big days and big yardage plays and stuff like that to both Jonnu Smith and Kyle Pitts on Sunday. So Dalton Kincaid should be in line for a good performance on Thursday night. Should be able to start out your week 8 with a decent amount of points, maybe 12, 15, maybe 20 if he gets in the end zone. I'm excited about Dalton Kincaid. He's somebody that I am absolutely starting on Thursday Night Football if I need to.
Gosh, this is the Dalton Kincaid special of 4th and Troll heading into week 8. Oh, I could not be happier. I have nothing to add because it's just transition from him being our waiver wire ad, both of us agreeing on this, and then you jumping right in and being like, and start him. And start him in 2 days.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Get him off of waivers and lock him in your lineup. There you go.
Wow. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hit us with the must start, Wes.
My must start. I want to just give some additional confidence for anyone that may be wondering if it's matchup circumstantial for this player, also on the Buffalo Bills. I'm here to make a definitive statement for everyone that lock in James Cook for the rest of the season. He is no longer a questionable player for whether or not he's going to put up points for you to win. James Cook is your starting running back for the rest of your season, except for that one bye week that they will be having at some point. Otherwise, James Cook has proven that he is a great running back for the Bills and for fantasy. And the only question we had when he had a couple of down weeks was, what does it look like when the Bills aren't just cruising through the game and they need to come back and win? Well, they were down the entire game against the Patriots until maybe like 3 minutes left. And they still went with James Cook. He is a lock. He is your must start. James Cook, roll him out Thursday night.
Yeah, RB14 on the season right now. Don't know if you guys remember
that
preseason headline of he will take over that backfield and be a top 15 running back, but he is right there, and I'm excited for James Cook. I think there's exciting things to come for him, especially on Thursday Night Football. Lock him in. I have ultimate trust, and I will be starting him in many leagues on Thursday night. My risky start for the week is Rachaad White. Here's the thing with Rachaad White. He is a volume play. He is the guy. He is the running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There is not much other competition for him. And I think it's a risky start because not only did we see Ramondre Stevenson score a touchdown on Sunday, we also saw Ezekiel Elliott score a touchdown on Sunday against the Buffalo Bills. They gave up 2 rushing touchdowns to running backs. I think that's something worth noting. And the last thing I'll say on Rachaad White is that he has a 96% catch rate this season. He has caught 22 of 23 targets this year. What he's made of those targets, I'm not sure what to tell you. It hasn't been fantastic, but he is reliable in this passing game for Baker Mayfield. And in a game where I think this Bills D line is going to be challenging him a lot, I think Rachaad White could Alvin Kamara PPR his way to a decent week for you if you need him in a flex spot. I know he was drafted around the flex area, so if you don't have anyone else that you figured out through waiver wire or trades, I think Rachaad White can slot into a flex spot for you this week based off of some previous success we've seen for running backs against the Bills and also his reliability in the passing game. So Rachaad White is a risky start for me on Thursday night.
Your closing points was what I was going to state as well, is that I would consider him as the flex option because at this point, again, we already know what the injuries are as of now, and there's no bye week, so it's not like you have to consider Rachaad White in place of a running back. But for the flex option, depending on somebody's roster, depending on your roster, Rachaad White could be a legitimate option. I really like that you reminded us that Ezekiel Elliott scored because that got lost in the wind, gone with the wind for week 7. Like I don't think anybody really paid attention to that happening. Saw Stevenson put up a decent amount of points, and they're like, okay, I guess I kind of got my money's worth because I listened to Noah and I traded for Ramondre Stevenson, and I'm doing pretty well now. But it's a risky start. I am with you. I thought about him as my risky start, and I considered him as a a risk. I wasn't sure if it was a good or bad risk, but he hasn't been up to par exactly, but could happen here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my risky start is your must start. I was going to say the risk was Dalton Kincaid because it's coming off of your waiver wire most likely. And there's not much more for us to say about Dalton Kincaid. The reason I wanted to say it was a risk, I was going to go into this saying it was a good risk. But I think it just depends on who your tight end currently is. Like if you've obviously got... If you've got Sam Laporta, if you've got Mark Andrews, don't start him over that. It's got Dallas Goedert. It feels like Goddard is kind of rolling in much better than Devonta Smith is for the Eagles. You know, obviously not over Hawkinson, maybe not over Darren Waller, but other than that, other than those tight ends, I think after everything that we have said about Dalton Kincaid, you could probably roll him out. You get a pretty nice head start in the tight end spot on your team going into Sunday. I really like this as a Miami Dolphins fan. I'm quite upset that he plays for a division rival, but as a fan of football and a fan of this guy, I'm really happy he's going to have the sole opportunity as the tight end, man.
Yeah,
Here's my risk.
He should instantly slot in right now as a top 12, if not top 10 tight end. So that should be a starter in every league. So he should be in starting lineups this week, and it is, it will be a risk because we don't know what he's going to look like with the sole opportunity. It should be exciting for Dalton Kincaid. It's exciting stuff.
One last thing, because you have him as your must start. I'll just say, I think I'd start Dalton Kincaid over Evan Ingram this week.
I don't know how they play. I think that's It's interesting that I have to think about that, and you are already made up on that because you were higher on Ingram coming into the season than I was.
Yeah.
Ingram
if I want
feels
9
safe.
points.
Yeah, Ingram feels like the floor play. Kincaid feels like he could be the 18-point play if he gets the end. I don't know. We'll see. That's pretty close for me. That would be probably the cutoff point of consideration for me there of like, okay, I have Ingram. Do I want? Yeah, that'd probably be where I land with those two guys there. So definitely something worth considering if you got those guys on your roster. My don't start here for Thursday Night Football is just going to harp on it again. Gabe Davis. He sucks. He sucks real bad. I don't like Gabe Davis. I'm not excited about starting Gabe Davis. He has only 2 games this year with more than 3 catches. And the Bills just honestly in this game shouldn't be in the script for him to really be involved, especially with Dalton Kincaid being probably a more priority option here. So that's pretty much where it's at. I feel like 3 weeks in a row now I've just taken an opportunity to crap on Gabe Davis, but I just don't think he's a reliable fantasy option. So we'll see. I'll have to see what happens. But Gabe Davis, don't start. That's it.
My don't start for this week is Gabe Davis of the Buffalo Bills because he's only had 2 games with more than 3 receptions and only 3 games with 4 targets or more. We literally wrote down the same notes as to why we think Gabe Davis is not a good option for Thursday night. And I'll also just throw in to close it out here. Here's some of the players that are currently ranked higher who have scored more points than Gabe Davis in the season. For anyone that's looking at that flex option, Tutu Atwell, Devonta Smith still has scored more. Drake London, Josh Downs, Kendrick Bourne, and Marquise Brown. So you've got some pretty good options if anyone was actually considering Gabe Davis. Double down on that. Great way to close the show. Don't start Gabe Davis.
Love it. Love it. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us. We are always so excited to bring you another episode of 4th and Troll Fantasy. Let us know who your top waiver ad is going to be. Obviously, we love ourselves some Dalton Kincaid. Let us know if you're looking to pick him up, how much fab you're willing to drop if you're spending that top waiver priority for him. Let us know in the comments. While you're down there, subscribe, like, ring that bell. Let us know what your favorite moment of the episode has been, moment of the season has been. Let us know how you're doing in fantasy. Because we want to know. We love doing this with you guys, and we're excited to keep on doing it for the rest of the season. It's a fun time. Be sure to check us out on all of our social media below. we're definitely putting out some content there for you as the week goes on in between episodes. Join us on Friday for a Thursday night football recap of Bills versus Bucks, and we're going to give you some studs and duds for Week 8. It's going to be a fun time. My name is Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And this has been 4th and Troll Fantasy. 4th and Troll Fantasy is a production of FQ Media and Selby Artistic Workshop.